All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Office Add-ins Developer Community Call. Today is January 8th, 2020, and really happy everyone could join us for the first call of the new year. Just a few notes about the call before we get started here. For anybody who's new, if you don't already have the recurring invite, you can download it using the AKA MS link on this slide. This call happens the second Wednesday of every month. So next month's call will be on Wednesday, February 12th. This is a chance for everyone to meet the folks on the product teams that are building the Office JavaScript APIs and the Office Add-ins platform. We talk a lot about what's new and what's coming soon, so this is a great way to kind of be on the leading edge of what's happening in the Office Add-ins platform. You also get to witness some technical deep dives and learn in depth about certain subjects. And occasionally we'll have a customer presentation where you get to learn from other folks that are building on the Office Add-ins platform. So today we're going to start like we always do with a quick overview of the Office Add-ins platform. We're going to learn about what's new and what's coming soon with the Excel JavaScript APIs. And then we're going to talk about SPFX, the SharePoint Framework, and building Office Add-ins that way. And a quick announcement then about creating an SSO-enabled Office Add-in. That's about to get a lot easier than it has been to this point. I'm Kim Brandl. I'm Senior Dev Writer on the Office Platform team. I'm joined by my colleague here, Alex.
Hello.
And we also have on the phone with us, Raymond, here to talk about Excel, and Vesa here to talk about the SPFX and Office Add-ins.
Hello, hello.
So with that said, I'm going to toss it off to Alex and let him talk about the Office Add-ins overview.
All right, thank you, Kim. Like Kim mentioned, we like to start off this call with a brief overview of Office Add-ins to make sure everyone's on the same page. So what is an Office Add-in? An add-in is a web service that you interact with through your Office client. So you have your web service that you can access through Excel or PowerPoint right within the workbook or presentation. An add-in consists of two parts. One is the web service itself, and that is written with familiar web technologies like JavaScript, HTML, or CSS. And then there is a second part, the manifest file, and that is what configures your Office host to be able to find the web service out there. That manifest file is what's shared across platforms and to your customers. Either it's uploaded to the Office store for people to download, or it's sideloaded for testing, or it's deployed through your admin center. And that allows your add-in to be hosted on desktop, on Mac, online, and all these different clients. So what can this add-in do? Well, since it is a web app, it can use any web APIs or Azure services, anything like that. It can access the power of the Microsoft Graph. And it can also use the Office JavaScript APIs, which is usually the focus of this call. That allows it to directly interact with the workbook or Word document or Outlook message and access that information, send it out to the cloud, get it back, whatever you need to do and however you need to access that information and manipulate it. So if you'd like to try out add-ins, you can head over to our documentation site. There we have a series of 5-minute quick starts that'll get you up and running with a working add-in. You can also take our full-fledged tutorials and start playing around with the APIs in ScriptLab so you can see how those Office JavaScript APIs actually interact with your workbook or Word document. And with that, I think I'll turn it back over to Kim. Thank you, Kim.
Awesome. Thanks, Alex. So next up today, we have Raymond here to talk to us about what's new and coming soon with the Excel JavaScript APIs.
Okay, thanks, Kim. Thanks, everyone. Happy New Year to everybody. My name is Raymond. I'm a program manager in Excel JavaScript API, our team located in Beijing. And today I would like to talk about the three topics. One is 1.11 GA time. The second is 1.11 beta API candidates. And the third one, I will share you how to try our beta API, and I'll give you a demo at the end. So the first one is the time when we can GA our 1.11, which is in the build, which is in May 19 to 21. You can check on the website on that to get more details about these the build events. Okay, here is the beta API candidates. As we know that in 1.9 we released an Ignite, which is 2010 APIs. And we're gonna add 37 more APIs to 1.11. And now it is in the beta. We have the cultural info 8 APIs for cultural info and 15 for comments, range, format, and slicer, as well as a workbook and calc events. And also we have the row hidden events as well. So totally there's 37. Okay, so first one I would like to introduce the cultural info number. The cultural info that can be used to get the current setting, the system setting of the decimal separator, thousand separator, and also can get the there are two different kinds of setting. One is the system setting, another one is the Excel settings. That was a decimal separator and a group separator. You can use that API to get this information. And you can also check the open document as it's already available online. You can click that to get more information on how to use this API.
And just a note for the folks as we continue on here, we'll be posting this slide deck when we post about the blog post to recap this call. So you'll have access to all the links here as we go along. And Alex will be pasting them into the chat window as we go along as well.
Yeah, thank you, Kit. By the way, this is all the candidate API. It doesn't mean that we have to release those API, because now we want to hear your feedback, and if there's anything we need to change or any feedback is really welcome, and we may do some modification if there's needed. So your feedback is really important to our 1.11 API, our beta API. Okay. So for range area, range object, we have a new API which is very useful. As we know that we have copy and paste, but we don't have the cut and paste. So we've received a lot of feedback from a lot of requests from a customer. So we released this API, so you can use the move to and can realize your copy cut copy feature. Okay, and the range format, we enable the indent. You can use this API to adjust indent, increase indent, or decrease indent. And slicer, we enable the name in formula. Okay, and we have released 15 more about the comments API. Previously, in 1.10, we released about 30 API for comments, and then we get 15 more. These may give you a possibility to access the comments reply, comments and mention all these kind of information, which is very useful. And for workbook level and worksheet level, we add a few more capability. And for workbook, you can use the workbook.close. They can let you close the whole the workbook. And save can enable you to save the document. And as well as the get file async, we support PDF format. For the worksheets, we support the calc events. Then you can use these to listen whether there's a calc triggered. So the last is the row hidden events. So you can use the row hidden events to monitor whether the customers hidden the row or unhidden row. And that can give you the information where is address, what's the type, and which sheet our user are doing that. Okay, so all these API, data API, how do you do it? Actually, it's very simple. You could use, or you could change your reference to beta CDN. Then, like in GitHub, you could choose to change the 1 to beta, and then you can have the capability to use that. So let me share my screen. I will give you a demo how to use that. Okay, so let me do it from very beginning. Okay, this is a blank snap. Okay, so if we run it and just nothing, this is just a blank. And if I want to, for example, I want to use the cultural info API, so I'm gonna do this. The the cultural info is actually, as I showed you previously, is under the application. So I can do is I load these API, load this property, and then I just very easy just show what's the cultural name for, and then I'll just want to know what's the system's decimal separator. So that's very simple. Okay, so when I do run, okay, you got the arrow. The reason is that we are not. This is reference the product CDN. So if I go to the library here, if I change it from 1 to beta, then I do it, run it again. Here, okay. Then the beta API is be able to access. Now you can see that your system cultural name is I'm located in China, so this is ZHCM, my system setting, and my decimal separator is this one. Yeah. So that is the end of my demo. So please try out all these beta API, and your feedback is really are very helpful for us. See whether you have advice and suggestion how we can make it better. If it is necessary, we need to do some changes for these API. So before May, before the build, May 19, we still have a chance to do some modification for those API if you have some requirement or special ask for this. Okay, and beside all these API, our team is still working on the 1.12 API. 1.12 may include some API like precedence, like custom properties, like the comments, events, something like that. And we will share more details in the future community call. That's all from my side. Thank you very much. And yeah, and I return my control back to Kim.
Hey, thanks, Raymond. Just one quick question for you, just for folks. I know we're very interested in hearing their feedback about the beta APIs that you're showing us today. Do we want them to provide that feedback via GitHub? Is that the best way for them to do that?
Yes, correct. Please share the feedback through GitHub.
So at the end of this deck, everyone, there's going to be a slide with some learn and engage resources, and one of the links on there is going to be the GitHub repo. It's in the Office Dev org and GitHub, and it's called Office.js, Office-JS. So if you do have feedback about any of the beta APIs or anything that Raymond showed today, feel free to provide feedback to us that way. That would be great. And likewise, there'll be a link also to user voice, which is how we collect feature requests. So if there's APIs that you haven't heard of being already under development that you think would be really useful for you, you can submit them to us via user voice, and there'll be a link to that as well. So thanks, Raymond. That's really great. It's really great to see the velocity with which we continue to add APIs to Excel. It's really a very robust set of APIs now. So that's awesome. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I received one question from the chat box. I know people I think asking me whether the API for Note. Right now, for our plan, we don't support the old-fashioned of notes, so we only support the comments, the modern comments. Thank you for your question.
Great. And folks, if you have any other questions about the Excel APIs, feel free to post them to the chat window. And Raymond, if you can keep an eye on the chat window there and just kind of correspond with people that way, that would be great.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Awesome. So next up, we have Vesa here with us from the SharePoint team. He's going to talk about building Office Add-ins using the SharePoint framework.
Excellent. Thank you, Kim. So before I actually start, so my name is Vesa Juvonen. I'm a principal program manager in the OneDrive SharePoint team, which is a joint engineering effort. I'm also responsible of our open source and community engagement, so making sure that our customers and partners understand how to do extensibility in Microsoft 365 in general, or in the SharePoint and OneDrive area. And obviously that includes Graph and everything else what we do in this side. Now, in SharePoint side of the house, we've been using our latest extensibility model, which is SharePoint Framework, for a while. And SharePoint Framework was released almost 3 years ago, and it has been widely successful in the cloud. And it's designed for a UX layer extensibility. So basically, if you want to modify and create a widget on a SharePoint, or want to create a widget in Microsoft Teams, or nowadays, if you want to create a widget or functionality or a solution, also in Office Addins, you can actually take advantage of SharePoint Framework. Now, why on earth I would actually do that would be probably the first question if you're not familiar with SharePoint Framework. So let's actually start with that one quickly. So first of all, if you're not familiar what is a SharePoint Framework and how these things work, obviously I will show you some resources and a live demo in a second. But the beauty of SharePoint Framework is that we take care of the hosting. So number one challenge what Office Addins developers kept on saying, and enterprise developers who were planning to do an enterprise extensibility for their customers was saying that, well, it always gets complicated because somebody needs to host my extensibility, my web application. I need to create an Azure application. And when I go and request an Azure application for my customer, enterprise customer, it takes ages to get that. And all of those permissions and everything else, it's really, really difficult. With SharePoint Framework and Office Addins development, all of this is automatic. You don't actually have to worry about hosting because everything is hosted for you automatically. So your code is being hosted by us, which is a great thing because you will save money. Now, the second really good thing is that authentication. So authentication with SharePoint Framework and Office Addins, it just works. You don't need to do anything related on your code. The authentication just works automatically. So there's a single sign-on, you're authenticated with Microsoft 365 or Office 365 identity, and you are good to go. Now, the code maintenance is a good thing as well. So the same code can work across SharePoint, Microsoft Teams, and Office. Exactly the same code. You don't have to do any changes within your code, except unless you want to access something service or application specific. For example, using the Office JavaScript SDK, then you obviously use the Office JavaScript SDK, which is given to you easily within the code as well. And I'll show you that one in a second as well. But you can basically, the baseline component and baseline implementation and solution is exactly the same. So you can reuse the same piece of code, which is super, super important. The skills reuse, super important thing. You don't actually have to learn anything specific if you're developing anything for these three different applications. So it's the same tool set. It's the same Yeoman generator. It's the same APIs. It's the same TypeScript version. It's the same extensibility model, which we're taking advantage. So you can actually build on top of your existing skill set. The deployment is super easy. You basically have automatic hosting, and there's one way of deploying Office Addins, Microsoft Teams tabs, or SharePoint Framework web parts as well. Now, we're also looking into having a more consistent and, let's say, more wider Microsoft 365 developer story. And this is something which is coming slightly later. So sooner or later, you don't actually use SharePoint Framework to create Office Addins. You use Microsoft 365 Framework or whatever it will be called. Even in Ignite, we kind of said, we didn't say out loud what it will be called because it's a marketing decision. But there will be a one unified Microsoft 365, is it a component or an application platform, where you can actually then say that, hey, I want to have a component. And with that component, you can define where it's going to be hosted. It's going to be hosted in Office Add as an Office Addins, or as a Microsoft Teams tab, or as a SharePoint Framework web port. The governance, so you can have a one centralized management of the governance as well. So managing all of your applications in a single location. This comes with a unified app catalog, which is in development and not yet available. And then cross-platform support in the Office using the same SharePoint Framework web port or your Office Addins across the Windows, Excel, PowerPoint, and Office across all of the different platforms as well. Again, same piece of code, which is a super, super important thing. So those three things are coming. They're not yet available. Technically, the whole implementing Office Addins using SharePoint Framework is in preview. So we released it actually to preview yesterday. So this is super, super new stuff for you to take advantage. We did show it in Ignite already, so you might have actually seen some of the videos. Now, the longer-term vision, what we want to do with Microsoft 365 platform is really to come up with a one unified way of doing extensibility. Obviously, It's a complex platform, and obviously behind the scenes we're using Microsoft Graph APIs because that gives you the contextual, personalized access to the relevant information. And then you can use the specific APIs and SDKs for the service what you're using. But the whole idea of this longer-term vision is to have a one Yo at Microsoft 365 where you can actually then create your application or your widget or a solution, which then you can define where it's going to be hosted, when it's going to be surfaced. So you don't actually, again, need to have specific knowledge of a specific application. And sure, if you're implementing an Excel-based extensibility, you will take advantage of Excel JavaScript SDK, and it has its own specific things to make happen. But the actual widget, the implementation of the style, is the same across the Microsoft 365. And that's the vision where we're heading gradually. This will take a while still to get there, but this was already presented in the Ignite 2019 in November in Orlando a few months ago. But that gives you a scene where we are heading. Now, like I said, yesterday we released the preview version of Office Add-ins built with SharePoint Framework. And even that sounds really weird, by the way, creating Office Add-ins using SharePoint Framework. Why would you use SharePoint Framework to create Office Add-ins? Well, that's precisely the reason why we are renaming all of this stuff as a unified platform sooner or later. But for now, what we're actually doing is that we are building a SharePoint Framework web part during the preview timeframe. We have a SharePoint Framework web part together with Office Context, and we have the Office Manifest. And we're using site loading during the preview timeframe, and that actually is the Outlook Web Access application, so Outlook Web Access add-in, which you can then take advantage within your Outlook Web Access. This is the preview timeframe, and we're looking into extending this then to cross all of the other applications as well. So Word, PowerPoint, Excel, and all of that work is being done already or being actively worked on. So let's have a look on this one in practice. So what does it actually mean that you build using a one specific tooling and you target either web part or a SharePoint or a Teams or an Office Add-ins? And what does it mean that I can access the Office JavaScript SDK within my code? Let me jump first on the commander. So let's actually have a look on how do we create this. So if you are familiar with SharePoint Framework, then it might be super familiar what I'm doing here, but let's actually have a look on what we're doing. So first of all, we are using the SharePoint Framework Yeoman generator. Like I said, for now, sooner or later, there's going to be Microsoft 365 Yeoman generator, which you use for generating the UX layer for extensibility. And because this is a preview capability, we're going to do, before I go to the command line, let me recap slightly. You can find the documentation in AKMS SPFX is actually the URL. AKMS SPFX is the easiest way to find the relevant documentation. And that's a really easy thing to remember as well, SPFX meaning SharePoint Framework. From here, I can search for Office Add-in or Office, and we can actually find the building Office Add-ins using SharePoint Framework. And that's basically then the tutorial, which we kind of take advantage in this quick demo as well. So we're going to use the Yeoman generator, and we're going to use the +beta command behind it. So let me actually get back on the command line and do the +beta. And I'll do skip install here, which basically means that I'm not going to run the Yeoman, the npm install, which will save some time for showing you what we actually get for executing the Yeoman generator. So our Yeoman generator in the SharePoint Framework is first going to ask what's the solution name. So Outlook demo is fine. We're going to target SharePoint Online for now. Like I said, for now, this is quite SharePoint specific questions, but all of this is going to be changed in the future. Use a current folder. Do we want to allow tenant admin to deploy stuff immediately across the tenant? Yes. Do we want to have a specific permissions? No. We're going to target a web part for now, and we're going to call it Outlook demo. And description is fine. Do we want to use React Knockout? Well, for now, let's not use any JavaScript framework. And there we go. The Yeoman generator has created us the solution without Node modules folder. So quickly having a look on what actually happens here is that we give you a web part solution and web part baseline solution. And we also give you, which is basically ready to go as a starting point. And we also give you a manifest file, which is ready to go to get hosted in the Outlook Web Access. So you can easily get started on testing things because everything what you need is available in here. So I'm not going to actually package this one. I'm going to close this one. I'm going to use another solution which I created earlier. because I wanted to save some time for not actually installing the node modules, and that's the one, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, that is the one. So this is a solution which I created earlier, where we actually have an access already to the Office context, and accessing the Office context is nothing more than in the web part or in the panel implementation. I do this.context.sdks. And from here, again, depending where to a panel or a widget or an application, whatever we want to call this in the future, if it's actually hosted in Office, and that Office context is then available. And from the Office context, I can actually access something like mailbox and mails and messages and all of that, whatever is the API what you need to access on. Now, I can then use this context to figure out, am I actually in Office or am I in SharePoint? So I can use exactly the same piece of code as an Office add-in or as a SharePoint framework or as a Teams tab as well, if you prefer to do that. So in this case, we're just going to basically output a message depending on the fact that are we in SharePoint or are we in Office. So let's quickly actually walk this through, because this is super cool, because all of the hosting, deployment, everything else is super streamlined for you. So let me actually do gulp package. And I'm going to do gulp package ship, which basically means that I'm packaging my TypeScript solution as an SBPKG, or ready to be packaged as an SBPKG file. If you're familiar with SharePoint Framework, that might be useful. So I'm going to do gulp bundle, that's the ship, which is going to actually prep the package and prep the TypeScript to a JavaScript format. And there we go. And then it's ready to get actually packaged. And the beauty of the SharePoint Framework solution model really is the fact that we can actually package our solution as an individual solution file, which actually contains all of the assets, images, JavaScript files, all of the other assets as well. And that's actually being done by using, and the rules of that is being controlled by the package solution JSON file. You can even ask Microsoft Graph permissions. So nobody needs to go to Azure AD and create an application and grant permissions and go through all of that burden in the enterprise development process to get those permission granted. You don't actually need to go to Azure AD at all. You just request the permissions, and the tenant administrator of the Office tenant can grant the permissions in this for your application. Quite streamlined experience. Now, let me actually do gulp package solution as well. So I'm going to actually package the solution. It's not going to take too long that we actually get stuff created. And let me actually open up that solution. So here's my solution. We can actually see I'm located in Finland. It's 6:31 right now in the Finnish time frame. So let me actually go to my tenant. How are we going to install this to my tenant? Right now, it is still using the SharePoint app catalog. Again, we're working on a unified app catalog experience in a tenant level. That's coming sooner or later this year as well. And I'm installing the solution to my tenant, and it's going to actually ask some permissions. It's going to ask some do some nodes related to Minecraft permissions, which the solution is requesting to get permissions as well. I'm not actually using those in the sample, so I don't need to grant those the permissions as such. But now, there we go. Our solution is being hosted. What's really cool about this model, again, if you're not familiar with SharePoint Framework, is the fact that this file, this SBPKG file, actually contains all of the assets. It contains all of the JavaScript files, it contains all of the manifest files and all of those stuff. So everything is automatic. I can send that file to any of my customers and say, install that to your tenant, and you're good to go. Super easy, super convenient experience as well. Now, we have the solution available. Now we need to actually take that available in the Outlook Web Access. So let me actually go to one email in here. Let me go to my add-ins functionality. And let me actually get the path to the folder. Let me actually open up a folder one more time. So I actually get the manifest location. That's my manifest location for this file, which we, by the way, create automatically for you as well. So you don't have to worry about how do I create the manifest. We create it for you with the default settings. So now if I go to the Outlook settings in my tenant, my applications, add from file, I can upload my application manifest file, install that as using the site loading during the preview time frame, and then means that I can actually start my application, which is actually automatically hosted from the SharePoint, and super easy, super convenient way of implementing add-ins. Oh, And well, that worked really well. And then I did a mistake. I'm not going to spend too much time on investigating. We are in a preview time frame. I will need to double check what did I actually do wrong, and I know what I did wrong. So I actually used the wrong manifest file. Let me actually fix that, so I will prove you that the things are working properly. So let's do that one more time. It's not going to take too long. I don't have too much time on my belt anymore because I promised to do stuff in 15 minutes. There we go. Let's close. That wasn't necessary, but let's get the application manifest file one more time in. And uploading from a file. And I uploaded the wrong file. That was the problem. Let's install that. There we go. And let's get my application available. And now it's getting hosted, and there we go. Welcome to Office, extending Office with custom business extensibility. There's the context. I'm accessing the email address where I'm actually there. You can do some level of a configuration as well, and everything will be available for you. Again, super convenient, automatically hosted. You can take advantage of things. You can get access on the Office.js, so the JavaScript SDK from the implementation really easily as well. But I think that's pretty much from my side. Like I said, we do have a tutorial. We are more than willing to get your feedback on this one. There's multiple people in the Office Addins engineering who would be highly interested in getting your feedback on this one as well, because this definitely is not a SharePoint specific thing. This is an Outlook and Office Addins engineering investments mainly. And for SharePoint specific stuff, we do have an issue list in the SP DevDocs issues, where we would love to have your input. So github.com SharePoint SP DevDocs issues, where we would love to have your feedback, your input, your suggestions related on things which you might be finding from the solution. But that's it from my side for now. So hopefully you find that interesting and it's a useful thing for you as well. Thank you. Maybe before we move to Kim, just to pinpoint the fact, this is not going to replace the SaaS level implementations of add-ins. This is definitely an add-on tool for your tool belt. So basically designed for enterprise developers and let's say system integrators who implement enterprise extensibility for Outlook and Office as well. So you easily can then get deployed your stuff, but there's obviously still will be applications which are web-hosted applications like, let's say, GitHub or, let's say, Trello. And if you want to extend any of those ISV solutions within your Office Add-ins or in your Outlook, the model still remains exactly the same as in the past. But I think that's it for now. Please give us feedback, and let's jump back on Kim's screen.
Great, thanks, Vesa. I think we had a question or two maybe posted to the chat, so if you can keep an eye on the chat there, Vesa.
I'll follow up on those. Absolutely.
Great.
Thank you.
Really cool to see this integration with the SharePoint Framework and Office Add-ins. Like Vesa said, just yet another way that you can build Office Add-ins in addition to the ways you've already been able to build them previously. Also really cool to see the direction that things are heading in with the M365 developer experience in this greater effort on our part to make developing across the various Microsoft workloads a seamless experience versus feeling like everything is a little bit different. So really cool to see where things are headed there. All right, so I'm going to talk just for a minute about the process of creating SSO-enabled Office Add-ins. So until now, if you have wanted to create an Office Add-in that uses single sign-on, it's been possible, but it's been a little bit of a journey. We have quick tutorials, I'll call them, in the documentation that walk you through all of the various steps required to establish the necessary configuration settings in Azure, and then to create the codes necessary to enable SSO within an Office add-in. While that's been possible, it's been tedious, and there's a lot of manual steps that have to be done there. So I'm happy to announce today that very soon you'll be able to use the Yeoman generator for Office add-ins to create SSO-enabled Office add-ins. So this isn't available quite yet. We're putting the finishing touches on it now as we speak. Should be available very soon. Keep an eye out on the Office Developer blog. I put the link here at the bottom of the page for an announcement when this is available. But essentially, the next version of the Yeoman generator that we publish, that we release, will give you the ability to use the Yeoman generator to create an Office add-in for Word, Excel, or PowerPoint that uses SSO. So what does that mean? It means the Yeoman generator is going to automatically take care of for you all of the manual steps you used to have to perform in terms of creating the application in Azure, getting the client secret, etc. and then plugging that into the code within the Office Add-in project. All of that will happen for you seamlessly, automatically, just as part of creating the project with the Yeoman generator. So it's a really cool, really quick way to get up and running with single sign-on in Office Add-ins. And I will point out here too, we had a question earlier in the chat window about the status of SSO as a feature within Office Add-ins. It's still in preview as we speak today. I don't believe we've yet announced a timeline for GA, but I'll follow up with the PM who owns SSO offline, and we'll post, if we have any information to share about potential GA timelines, I'll post that to the blog post that we published following this call to recap the call. So keep an eye out on the Office Developer blog for that as well. So next, just an invitation to engage with us. We'd really love to hear from you. I know last year on the call, several different calls, we had customers present about the solutions that they're building on the Office Add-ins platform and share some really useful information. It was really beneficial to the broader audience here on this call. So if you're building something on the Office Add-ins platform, or maybe you've built something previously and you learned some lessons along the way, or you think it's maybe a really cool application of Office Add-ins, we'd love for you to reach out to us and chat about potentially sharing that with others on a future call. You can do that via this form here. It's AKA MS Office Add-ins Engage. And if you reach out to us that way, we'll be in touch and we'll connect and see if we can get you scheduled for an upcoming call. We're also really interested in hearing feedback about developer experience in general, but specifically the documentation. So if you have any feedback to share about the docs, you're welcome to reach out to us this way as well. And we'd love to connect with you and hear how we can improve that experience for you. I think we're doing pretty good on the Q&A. I'm going to skip past this. I think we've addressed a lot of the questions in the chat window, but just a quick call out. If there's any questions that we weren't able to answer in the chat window today, we will be posting a list of those questions with answers to the blog post that we published to recap this call. So we'll be publishing that blog post sometime in the next few days. It takes us a little bit of time sometimes to track down the right people to answer the questions, but keep an eye out on the Office Developer blog for the blog post, and we'll answer your question there if we weren't able to get to it today. So just some developer resources here. As I said, we'll be sharing this deck on the blog post as well, so you'll have access to all of these links when we do that, publish that deck. So lots of resources for learning about the Office Add-ins, JavaScript APIs, and platform, as well as resources for engaging with us. So earlier, Raymond presented about the Excel JavaScript APIs and mentioned that we'd love to hear your feedback about the beta APIs that he shared with us today in requirement set 1.11. You can do that via the GitHub link down in the Engage section of this slide. So it's just Office Dev/Office-JS in GitHub. So that's it. We're finishing a little early today. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We really appreciate your time today. We'll be publishing this recording of the call very soon to the Office Developer YouTube channel. And as previously mentioned, this call is the second Wednesday of every month, which means next month's call will be on Wednesday, February 12th. If you have questions that you want to submit ahead of time, feel free to do so via the second AKA MS link Office Add-ins form on this slide. And finally, if you don't already have the recurring series, you can add it to your calendar by downloading it for the last link in this slide. So thanks everyone for joining. I really appreciate it. And we look forward to seeing you on next month's call.